Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gut Girls podcast. We are now in episode 5. Hopefully, you heard Angela's story, part 1, which I loved hearing because, as being a gut girl and kind of Angela and I's past history, we've talked a lot about my story and my transformation. And so I'm so thankful that Angela's opening up and talking a little bit about her story. So we're going to kind of jump right in. And, you were telling us a little bit when we left off the last time, you were telling us a little bit about you getting into chiropractic school and starting to really kind of learn the body as a whole. So tell us about that. And I believe you had kind of your own sort of personal healing journey while you were in chiropractic school. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, so good to share this. It's actually awesome when you get the time to reflect back and realize where you came from, right?
Mm,
So, when we had talked last time, we mentioned that in chiropractic school, it was even then, you guys have heard me talk about chiropractic as kind of a kink in the hose. We believe that in the body, there's this natural energy that flows and it really helps the body thrive. And if there is somewhat of a kink in the hose, chiropractic can help just restore that natural flow. But even when I was in chiropractic school, I felt like I got a part of myself reconnected through the chiropractic adjustments and the treatment. Because, when you're in chiropractic school, you're getting adjusted all the time, which is fantastic. And you're learning all the things. So I've really felt a shift in my body when that treatment started. But I left off where I felt like there was still this inflammatory piece that I just quite didn't have, the answers for yet. And so that's what led me to in school, you learn the chiropractic curriculum, but there's clubs and seminars and diplomates outside of that, daily schedule of the chiropractic curriculum to learn beyond. And that's where I started doing, I would go every weekend with a group of girls and boys in my class. We would travel like an hour and we'd sit in these seminars all weekend to learn functional medicine, or what they called chiropractic internist. So that, or,
hmm.
or I was becoming a chiropractic internist through, that type of studying. So that was like an additional 300 hours that I accumulated in the course of chiropractic school that was focused around being, looking at the internal world of the human body. So I love that. And if I go back to the chiropractic mindset, they, taught us that yes, you're, if I'm putting it in layman's terms, like, unkinking the hose, but it's not just, it's toxins from the external world and it's chemical toxins, but they also talked so heavily about thoughts. They would say toxins and thoughts. And I don't think that I ever fully understood the thought part of it. Like I was like, what? You know what I mean? Maybe I'll get that later. I think I just kept going through the curriculum and I was like, okay, this will come to me later. And then as I went through the functional medicine piece, it started to make a little bit more sense to me that there was a lot of stress that people carried
Mm,
on their body, but internally, right?
oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we know a little bit more, or I think people are more aware of this through, there's a really great book out there called The Body Keeps the Score. And
Right.
there's a lot of other information I think that says it so nicely, but I had to learn that for myself in chiropractic school, and it was really in those weekly seminars or weekend seminars that I did that, and that's when I started to see the whole whole person as like I got to treat the whole thing, not just the physical musculoskeletal components, but there's this deeper inflammatory world that also goes to someone's mindset, like how they perceive the world is how their body responds to the world around them, right?
Yeah.
And so then you had mentioned like a personal healing story, and I think a lot of people can't, a lot of women can relate to this out there, but I went through it's so funny. Looking back at the timing, I was going through chiropractic boards. So one of to me, being a type A person that wanted to prove myself as a doctor, getting just by on boards wasn't enough. I wanted to be like, you know, whatever.
Ace 'em.
Exactly. I wanted to nail every part of words. And so it was stressful. I probably over stressed about it. But during that time, I realized that I had HPV. And so how that came about, was just a simple exam, right? Like you get your yearly exams as a female. And so the doctor had, said there was that finding, and it really came around as cervical dysplasia, which is like when the cells of the cervix start to shift, right? They start
Mm,
to change. And so it was identified in that way to me. And I was like, okay, what does this mean? What, what do you want me to do about it? What can I do about it? And um, their options were, let's just watch it, and that's a valid option, right? Like a lot of times it's like, hey, your body is going through something. I mean, that's a virus. Like your body is going through something right now. Let's just watch it. Let's see if your body can handle it itself. And so I think in my head I was like, well, I have the solution. I'm going to get adjusted. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to see, like, let my body do its thing. And I think I watched it for a while, but boards was so stressful. And I remember when I went back to have a second one, like a second exam, it didn't change. I don't remember it changing. In fact, I think it might even have, stepped up a notch in there. They call it like asterisks, or CIN is how they kind of denote it, if you guys are familiar. And so their specific level of telling me what it was like, I think slightly worse. And I was like, oh gosh, this isn't working.
mm,
And what's interesting is I sought out a more natural solution. So, if you guys are aware, there's a treatment called escharotic treatment. And that's more going to be like your natural, approach to this versus the conventional. And I'm sharing this with you because I think a lot of women actually aren't even educated in this. But conventional is, there's dysplasia or changes of the cells on the cervix. So, you could freeze that. And again, watch and wait, which is great. You can do that. Or you can do like what's called a LEAP procedure, where you basically take biopsies and kind of cut out, the parts of dysplasia and see if the body will heal, and just kind of keep an eye on it. And it's said, if you look this up. So I have this manual. I remember the Merck manual. If any doctor is listening to this, the Merck manual is like the manual to go to. And I remember reading through it of like, okay, what else do I do? And it mentions diet, like it mentions diet and lifestyle, but it mentions it, right?
mm.
I didn't have the Optimize Your Gut program like at that time.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I think I eat pretty healthy, so I'll just keep trugging along. And so I did. Um, but I never got the leap, or I never got the freezing of it, because I wanted something more natural. And if you guys think about this, even the conventional doesn't touch the actual virus itself, right? Nothing I've mentioned so far supports the immune system to help the body fight off this virus. So then if we look at the natural treatment, a natural treatment, and those aren't the only conventional, just FYI, but I'm just kind of sharing you guys with my story, and what I remember. So I sought out escharotic treatments, where there's a mixture like of calendula and herbs that you apply to the cervix. And it basically sloughs off, like, think of a menstrual cycle every month. So in my head, I was like, okay, this sounds more natural. I'm going to do this. And one of the fears in people with a LEAP procedure is you can have cervical scarring. And you guys know, when it comes to, birthing a child, if there's a lot of cervical scarring, that can cause a lot of issues. Um,
Hmm.
and so I went the natural route, got, like I said, several of the escharotic treatments done, and my body still didn't heal all the way. And I remember being so defeated and frustrated, because I was like, I'm in chiropractic school. I have the best natural solution to what I thought at the time, this HPV. And so why am I not, like, what am I missing? And now, hindsight, this goes back to you guys, when you listen to Diana's, if you haven't already, her story, when you were trying to get pregnant and your mom was in, the process of, like what you said, like she was dying and I was trying to get pregnant. um no wonder you couldn't get pregnant, right? And so
Exactly.
it wasn't, my story wasn't that intense, but like I was trying to heal a virus, and I was stressing night and day about not passing boards, but like hitting the A. And so no wonder nothing was
Hmm.
changing. And I say all this, really, you guys, I'm being super vulnerable in it and sharing this, because this is like the root that Diana and I are trying to get to everyone, as far as like, the treatment is the treatment, right? I mean, there's conventional, there's natural, no matter it could be the top notch, you could have the best doctor in the world. If you don't take that deeper dive and realize, like, but at the root of this, I'm holding on to some kind of stressor, whether that's mentally, emotionally, you know what I mean? What spiritually, whatever it is, a lot of times we hold on to things that we weren't meant to hold on to. And that in itself can outrun the best treatment. Stress will ruin the best diet, the best fitness, you know what I mean? The best treatment out there. So you really have to address, this is what goes back to the whole person. And so this also, I'm bringing this up to say, like, when we develop that Optimize Your Gut program, my goodness, it is a 3-month program and it is going to require you to kind of go all in, right, Diana? Because we know that's what it takes for transformation, correct?
Exactly. That's just what I was going to say. You know, in 2016, before I met you, I feel like I was stressed out all the time. I mean, I didn't have a mom to help me with my kids and I was working full time. And, it's just my husband was working all the time. So he was never around to help. And it felt, I was stressed out all the time. But if you would have told me, before I met you and really started all the gut work, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I'm stressed out, but I mean, that's not affecting my health. Like, that's not what's affecting my gut. That's not what's affecting me being, chronically constipated. I mean, everybody's stressed out, right? Well,
Mhm.
yeah, we are, but that is such a huge piece of it now. And so now I have, as I am trying to educate people with the knowledge that I've gained over the last few years, that's one of the first things that, like, this light, I have a conversation with them, they tell me about their story and whatever, and this light bulb goes off and I'm like, this she is so stressed out, or he is so stressed out, and so his body will not allow him to heal when they're like, I have this perfect diet and I do this and I do this, and I'm like, wait, but you're going through so much stress right now that you can't handle it. So I really appreciate you sharing your personal story, because I know it will resonate with a lot of people, and again with really all of our clients, where that's why we try to focus so much on stress reduction, stress management, so that your body can heal, and so your body then ultimately did heal from this virus. You were able to get to the root of it, which is a weak immune system, right? And
Mhm.
so we know that roughly 80% of the immune system is housed in the gut. And so once you start kind of pulling all those pieces together, reduce the stress, improve your immune system and your gut function, then what happens? It's gone, right? And then you can manage it. So I assume that's kind of how it went for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember getting through that phase of my life, and having the cervical exam where it was gone, and I was like, "Oh,
Mm,
amen to that." But it
yeah,
wasn't right afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, I had to, once it hit me of what was really going on, I was like, I have to accept whatever comes my, I have to be able to accept whatever comes my way.
yeah.
Um, and that is what I have sought. And like, honestly, I'd say from that point, even to today, that is my number one goal when it comes to my health. Like, people dying to ask us, like, what are you doing supplement wise? And we'll share, because I definitely, have, my supplement list that I take. But I always go back to what really matters to me every day for my health is finding that place of just solitude where
Mm,
I can find peace. Like, I have to find that every day so that it grounds me and I can, whatever comes my way that day, it's not going to just knock me over. That's
mhm.
really at the root of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you say that you have to work at it every day. And that's one of the things that we talk to our clients a lot about, where they want this like super quick healing. And for some people that, aren't super stressed out and they have the time to really dive into their nutrition and their health, we do see quick fixes a lot of times with them, like when we're working with them in the gut. But there are some people that they're under a ton of stress. They kind of have all those big things going on all at once. And we're like, hey, I mean, we can almost, predict it a little bit, where we're like, hey, your healing is going to take more time. You're kind of in that place where you have to be patient. And we tell people all the time, and that's why we do this membership too. I know I've mentioned it before, but we do the membership because we're like, we're constantly healing, right? It's, I
Mhm.
mean, our health is ongoing. It's not just going to change overnight. So leaving with that, I do want to kind of jump, because what I want to know is, now that you've kind of learned about the whole body, you've learned to heal yourself naturally, you've graduated from chiropractic school, I want to know, this is something that I truly do not know about you. I want to know about your first job as a chiropractor.
Yeah. So I got super blessed in the sense that when I graduated, you guys will all laugh, but so my husband is also a chiropractor and he graduated just a few years before me. And I remember we moved to Texas and he moved there for a job. And so I didn't, I had just graduated. And so I was looking for a job. And I just have to share this. So he's like looking online, like helping me find a job, and he comes across this place called Finish First, and it's in Texas, and it's a chiropractic office. And once he kind of found out about it, I made the call, I got the interview, and it was great. What we later found out was him and I worked pretty much, our businesses that we worked for were each other's biggest competitors. And it was actually really comical. Like, okay,
That is
you moved here.
wild. Wow.
Yeah, you moved here for this job. You helped me find this job. And now we're like each other's biggest competitors. But I will tell you, that was a side note just for laughs. If anyone has ever, married another doctor or whatever, and you guys like end up working together, competing against each other, I just thought that was funny. But the job that I first had was an epic job. My boss at that time, really high, what I thought was so amazing, and I could be wrong, but it seemed like he really hired me on more for the nutrition, internal medicine part,
Mm,
not so much the chiropractic. I mean, the chiropractic was the chiropractic, but it seemed like he was really seeking that out more because and what was a blessing was he was already, knee deep in it himself. And like I said before, hindsight is a blessing in a way because I mean, Diana, Gut Girls wouldn't be a thing had I not found, this job that was highlighting, not necessarily the adjustment itself, but the functional medicine piece. And so that job just again fell into my lap. It really reminds me that I'm doing what I was meant to do, right? Like
mm,
now that I reflect, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm meant to do. And so that's a confident booster in a sense of how it all worked out. But I got to practice both chiropractic and dabble in functional medicine there, nutrition, and we did 30-minute visits. So if you go to a chiropractor, everyone practices a little different. Some are 5-minute visits, some are 10, some are 15. Ours was a 30-minute visit. And it was again a blessing because it was in those visits that I would be able to sense, like, okay, this isn't just you sprained your ankle. You know what I mean? Or this isn't just I've been sitting at my desk all day, so my posture is forward and I have neck tension. There with every When you spend enough time with people, like you said, Diana, they will tell you their story because in a sense, don't we all want to tell our story? Like it's just the human nature. We are meant to connect, right? And so that was a place where I saw it not as a clinical setting. I never saw myself as the white coat doctor. You know what I mean? I literally opened my door in that office of like, I want to have coffee with you. Like
mm,
like I want you to come in and I want to be able to put my hands on you and feel what you're feeling. And then when you verbally express it to me, I could close my eyes and be in that place with you. And that's where healing is going to start. And that was tough because if anyone works in a setting like that, one, you're not seeing enough patients, right, to cover overhead. So there's always that tension of like, you still got to see a certain amount of people a day, but yet I would get so caught up in that moment with my patients. I loved going to the clinic for that reason. And it's funny, I remember once talking to a male doctor who said to me, I don't know what to do with it, also a chiropractor. He said, I don't know what to do with these middle aged women. I cannot get them better. And I was like, what do you mean you can't get them better? And he was like, I treat, a lot. Think of it, ladies that are listening, frozen shoulder. I mean, if you don't know this, or if you've ever had it, you do know this, but like frozen shoulder comes on as we near menopause. And that is because it's a hormone. It can be a big part of frozen shoulder is hormonal. What's happening with the estrogens underneath, what we don't see outside. We see the frozen shoulder, but it's really a hormonal thing. And so it's funny because he'd be like, I treat the frozen shoulder, but they're not getting better. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I remember saying to this doctor, I was like, that's because you're not listening to their story. And he was just like, what are you talking about? Like, they have a frozen shoulder. I heard that. Like, and it's just so funny that I find it again, this ability to connect as such a God-given gift of like, no, you got to listen to their story and find out what's going on if you truly want this person to get better. So that's really what my clinical experience bloomed into. And I have
Mm.
loved it ever since.
Well, I love that you say that such a big part of it was the 30-minute visits, how you feel emotionally connected, and that a big part of who you are as a chiropractor and is listening. And I can tell you that when we met, that's the one thing that I really remember so well. I remember where I was sitting. I remember what I had eaten that night. I remember how I felt talking to you. I remember so much about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I was very confused. I didn't understand it all, but I knew that you listened and I knew that you gave me hope that there could be something else. There's a different direction. So, I want to know. So, okay. So your first job was at Finish First, which I did not know. That's why I was kind of curious. I didn't know if you were somewhere before Finish First. So I met you through Finish First, through a mutual friend. I actually knew your boss, um, and I didn't know exactly what he did down there in Texas, but I am thankful that we were able to connect through him. And because he was actually from my town. And so that's cool. That's how we connected. And so then you're learning all of these things, you're listening to your patients, you're doing the 30-minute chiropractic visits, you're obviously working with patients now at this point virtually, and you and I connect. And so tell me a little bit about like my case and what you remember about it.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I remember my boss at the time just being like, "Hey, he said like, I think you can help her." And obviously you guys knew each other, but he brought me your situation. He's like, "I think you can help her." And it's so beautiful, I think, when someone else sees, like, he clearly saw the potential. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Of us two working together. Like, that is amazing. It just speaks for itself. But I remember just, obviously hearing what he had to say, and I didn't think too much of it except for like, okay, if he thinks I can help her, I believe in him. I trust him. I'm going to call her. So we made up the phone call, and I think what caught my attention about you was, remember again, so you weren't my first patient, but this was my first job, right? So like, I'm coming out of chiropractic school and I've had time in the clinic. And I think what I kept coming up against was this tension, which I think we'll talk a lot more on other podcasts about this, but this tension where people want you to just fix them. And you as a clinician being like, but there's work that I can't do for you, and you
Mm.
feel that. And when
There's
I
no magic fix.
exactly. And when I
Yeah.
talked to you, Diana, you just were so interested. Like, you didn't want to just hear, like, okay, just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. I mean, you said those words, but you genuinely just showed this deep interest of like, like, I could tell from the beginning you wanted to give me a lot of detail. When people want to give me a lot of detail, that's because they typically want to go all in too. Do you know what I mean? Like, they
Mm.
want the connect, like, you're telling me all this because you want to understand the deeper connection, right? You didn't just come up on the phone with me and say, "Hey, something is off. My hair is falling out and I'm in pain. What do I need to do?" Like, you were kind of what you were starting to tell me your story, right? Like, and so I was like, okay, if she wants to reveal all this to me, it's for a reason. So I remember listening and I remember writing down all the details. And if I'm being honest, I remember being like, wow, my boss gave me a case. Like,
Well,
Like
I
this.
mean, I had a parasite, right? I mean, I had a lot of kind of everything. My stool test was all over the place, best I remember.
Mhm.
And you were like, you're gonna have to work hard at this. I mean, I remember thinking that, you know.
Yeah, but I remember too, like in that. Okay, so it's funny you say that because I remember all that. But I think what I remember seeing, like the piece of paper that I wrote down all your notes, was what you were going through. Like you had talked to me about your mom, and you had talked to me about, your girls, and like you mentioned, like you didn't go into detail, right? But like you did mention certain parts of, like, because I remember I think asking you like, what happened before all this, and you kind of
Hmm.
dabbled in some of it. And so I remember having like, okay, here's what she's telling me symptomatically, but on that piece of paper, I remember like, here's what she's been through. And those
Yeah.
columns, it was that I was like, wow,
Well, and of
we,
course, a ton of antibiotics, and nobody had ever told me, you know, that I needed to support my body with probiotics. Like I just was lots and lots and rounds of antibiotics. You know, I was sick.
Mhm,
I would have a sinus infection or get strep throat as an adult, or you know, whatever. I was sick a lot.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you had asked those questions, and you started kind of connecting the dots. I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love to find patterns, right? Like patterns are such a way for my brain to kind of put the pieces together. But I'll say this too, as we continued working together, what else continued to stand out about you and your case is you reached out to me a lot. So like, and I'm not saying that as in like, I am so thankful you did. So, and I'm bringing this up because that's where you really transformed, is you leaned on me for so much, like, hey, this is happening. I'm taking the supplement you suggested, but this is happening. I'm out. I remember the one time you called and you had Todd, went out. I think we might have talked about this in your story, but like you guys went out to, was it dinner, and
Hmm.
you started having a reaction, right?
Yes.
And you called me literally from the car or the hotel, and like, and I think you guys may be hearing this thinking like, "Oh, wasn't that a burden for you?" And it's like, "No, no, no. You don't understand. Like that's actually how I was able to connect the little dots for you. Like, hey, was there onion?" I think I remember like a question. It was like, was there a lot of onion in what you ate?" Or we went over like stuff like that. And in that conversation, it might have been 20 minutes. We were literally able to connect the dots together, which calmed you down a little bit, which then prevented the cascade of inflammatory, like what I would call cytokines. But for you guys that don't know what that is, that's an inflammatory reaction in the body that would eventually have led her back to that painful pattern, right? And so I
Mm.
was trying to stop that from even happening. That's where we meet you. And what's beautiful about that is that's exactly how the Optimize Your Gut program is set up. We will have people that go through this program and they don't reach out to us, right, Diana? And it's tough because not everyone then finds that true transformation. Diana and I will talk like, "Oh my gosh, this person reached out to me today. They left us this message on the portal, whatever it is." Diana and I love that. Like we call each other and we're like, "This, okay, this is what I'd probably be recommending." And I'm like, "Exactly, you got it." Or, "Hey, just add this." Like we guys, this is what's happening behind the scenes. Like we are so invested, but it doesn't happen. That partnership doesn't happen unless you are as vulnerable as Diana was when she went through her transformation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just like this perfect uphill, you know, healing. I mean, you're going to have kind of some bumps in the road and things. And we've created the Optimize Your Gut program to, you know, kind of smooth out those bumps a little bit and help you understand your body and what it's going through during that healing process. But yeah, I mean, we enjoy people reaching out through the portal. And just as the great thing about the portal that I love so much is almost just as many that people just say, hey, you know, I ate this and this happened, or hey, I'm experiencing this, or hey, I haven't pooped in 2 days, or whatever. We have just as many people that hop on and they're like, hey, that 20 pounds that I've been trying to lose is finally come off. Like, hey, I am finally, you mentioned it on another podcast, like I'm finally drinking bone broth. And I couldn't even drink that because it would make me feel so sick. And I'm finally, you know, all of these, I finally can, you know, even just go out of my house. We have some of our clients that, you know, they're going to the bathroom so often that can't go out to eat with their family, like at a restaurant or whatever, because they spend the majority of the time in the bathroom. So, they're saying, hey, look these wins, listen to these wins. And man, do we love those too.
We do.
Um, so basically, you just kind of, after hearing my story and kind of taking that deep dive with me and some other patients that you had at the time, where they were willing to also sort of go all in, that's what led you even more to learn about the functional medicine side and the healing side, and learning and kind of pulling it all together. Not that you don't still you do see some patients chiropractically, but you really see that looking at the root cause and looking at the gut is where you like to start, or at least like pull it all together. So talk to us just a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so I think even over the past, several years, so I've been now in practice. I mean, if 2015 is when I started, so about 10 years. And over that 10 years, I've been so blessed to work alongside some of the most expert doctors in the field of the gut microbiome. And something that stood out to me is, one of the jobs that I had was weekly, we would have these round tables. So round tables are like, you're going over cases of, hey, here's this patient's test, here's the results. Um, and I was working at that time helping other doctors. So just to set the foundation of this, I was helping other doctors interpret certain lab tests for their patients. And so we had a lot of cases that we could review, and these doctors would come to us on these roundtables and be like, here's the case, and I did everything. Like, I mean, I really am doing everything. And then they rerun the test and the test would look worse. And it's like, why is this? And so it was so interesting. I love that season of my life where, amongst some of the experts in the field, to be able, who are very humble. I say that because the body is so intricate. You guys, we're never going to understand it all. Like, let's just say that if you ever meet someone that's like, I understand it's like, no, 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 you never will. And so you break down, these specific cases where, yeah, the protocol again looks awesome, but then there's so many variables. So, like, let me just explain this in the sense of, there could be a variable of like, hey, this person during your protocol was traveling, and oh my gosh, the environment they went to, like traveling out of the States, total different environment for our gut microbiome. Like, you know what I mean? Did they
Mm-hmm.
drink water from somewhere that possibly reinfected them? Was the protocol just not strong enough to bring their immune system up? And maybe I've seen this in a lot of cases. It's like you got rid of one virus, but in that protocol, they happen to pick up another. So, like, you have this perfect protocol and it does overcome the virus, but then the immune system can't come up. And so then you're like, well, why didn't their immune system come up? And that's where it was like, well, look at their stress and look at their sleep and look at their hormonal status. And like, do you guys like think of all these variables that you really have to kind of consider? And that's why healing is not linear. We talk about that all the time. Healing is not linear. It's, you want to see this trend over time. But that's where we always encourage you that, like, you're going to go through a little bit of bumps in the roads, and sometimes your tests are going to come back and not look so awesome. But if you find a pattern, which is where my eyes have been trained in the past, is find this pattern and identify it, and then keep your eye on that pattern and see how it's shifting slightly. That's how you see the patient's progress over time. And so it just brings us back that, like, healing is, not a race, it's a marathon. But that's in the past 10 years, being able to, I think, really work among these experts has, it's humbled me, and it's helped me realize, to set the expectations of healing for the patient in the beginning so that they're not
Yeah.
frustrated. Um, and I think I've learned that. So if I have to kind of say one thing about the past 10 years, it would probably be that biggest myth of healing is like, it's linear. Like, people
Mm.
start, they start feeling better. And then the minute something happens where they regress slightly, they throw all the cards back in because they're like, well, it didn't work for me. And it's like, no, No, like there's so many variables. That might have just been a blip in the road, but we were trending in the right direction. So it's a lot of, it takes a ton of communication, right? And I think that's why we originally started this podcast, Diana, because we're like, we need to get this understanding out if people are really going to heal. We can't just keep doing it one on one in a sense. Like the masses need to truly understand this. And that's why you go back to journaling so much, because a lot of doctors aren't going to give you this much of their time. I get it. I mean, trust me, but that's where the journaling helps you really understand the pattern and the ebbs and the flows. It helps you come back at this 360 viewpoint and see like, okay, I am doing okay. I am making progress. And it puts you
Mm.
back in that peaceful, net of safety of like, okay, it's not perfect, but I'm making progress. And that's ultimately what you want to see, right?
Yeah, that's so powerful, and also kind of a good segue into wrapping up this episode, where you talk about like these roundtables with other doctors and other people that specialize in their different worlds. And one thing that I love about you is you do such a great job like listening to the patient or their client and seeing like what their needs are. Do we need to take it a step further, and do you need to go back to your doctor and then come back to me, and we kind of do this walk alongside you in that. And we do that a lot, especially with skin. When we see that with the gut connection, the gut skin connection, that is a very real thing. And so if you are listening and you have problems with your skin, with eczema, things like that, I would highly recommend that you continue to follow along with us on these podcasts, because we have somebody that's going to specialize in the skin connection, in the gut skin connection, with us, that we work with and collaborate with on several different clients, that we work with them on the root healing of the gut and walk alongside them while they're looking more at them topically, right?
Mhm.
So stick around with us, because we are so excited to have a guest speaker on the next episode. So stay tuned for that.
The information provided on this podcast, including all episodes, show notes, and related content, is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The views expressed by the host and guest of the Gut Girls podcast are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Gut Girls LLC or any other affiliated organizations. While we are trained health professionals and certified health coaches, we are not acting in a licensed clinical capacity on this platform. Any recommendations made on this podcast, including those related to diet, supplements, lifestyle, and lab testing, are general wellness strategies intended for educational use. Always consult with your licensed healthcare provider before implementing any information heard here, especially if you have a medical condition, are taking prescription medications, or are under medical supervision. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this content as medical advice to treat yourself or others. Neither Gut Girls LLC nor the podcast hosts or any guests shall be held liable for any damage, loss, or injury caused by the use of this information.